Live everywhere.
Daily Co's Radio on netrootsradio.com presents
David Waldman. Kagro in the Morning Show. Now, here's David Waldman.
Hey, good morning, everybody. How are you doing? Are you still there? Have you been fired? Have I been fired? The show's over. We were fired by Donald Trump last night. Today is Wednesday, May 10th, 2017. Mark it on your calendar. Could be a historic date, or could turn out to be nothing. My inner cynic busting loose today to let you know my long-time theory that nothing changes unless there are shortages on the shelves. American consumerism, for better or for worse, is our only uniting signifier left these days. We all, of course, get our news from different places, watch it at different times, and consume it more or less in solitude. Now, of course, social media allows us to share our outrage from time to time, but it doesn't stop us from going to work. The show's starting, right? It's 9 o'clock. It was a little bit late. It's 9 o'clock. I'm doing the show. People expect it. Go to 7-Eleven for the coffee. It should be there. Go to Starbucks. Head to the bagel store. Unfortunately, millions of varieties of bagels, some of which I think are abominations, still on the shelves. And none we're none the worse for wear. I think disrupting the consumer supply chain is the key to revolution, in case you were looking for such a thing. We will, of course, be talking to Greg Dworkin about the day's headlines. And I'm surprised that, honestly, that Armando hasn't called yet, though he warned me that it would be about 9:15 before he intervened, and that we might not be able to get him off the air for the rest of the day. It's a good day for Armando. Joan McCarter may find herself tied up with incidents and accidents happening out there in the wider world, and the Senate floor, etc. We'll have to catch up on what's going on the floor, and what are people doing about the firing of the FBI director. This is one of those moments that, by all rights, all the theories of governance and how much Americans treasure their ancient liberties should find revolution in the air, but it's likely not in the offing. They will go forward, I think, with holding auditions for who wants to be an FBI director over at the Trump Hotel. I believe Giuliani is already in town. The short lists are out. They're ridiculous, of course, and I do find that Larry Sabato mentioning today the fact that Chris Christie is on anyone's list for FBI director, following all the humiliations, of course, but in addition, of course, the rest of us are more concerned about things like, oh my God, all of your top aides just went to jail for Bridgegate, and God knows what other corruptions are undiscovered with Christie and his, who knows what, with his relationship with Kushner, I don't even know. But, yeah, the idea of making him, they're talking about Sheriff Clark, Joe Arpaio, all the worst people in the world, essentially. Walker, Texas Ranger, apparently high on the list. He's not even a real cop, I don't think. That doesn't count. But, of course, plenty of opportunity for this situation to get much, much worse very, very quickly. And I think we'll see it. If the reports are accurate, and there's some question about that always, the Trump White House somehow caught by surprise, allegedly, in the backlash to this. They really didn't think that they were going to cause a political backlash. I have no idea how that happened, how you could possibly imagine that wouldn't be the chief reaction. And, of course, in a display of their tremendous sense of timing, the Russian ambassador or foreign minister is at the White House this morning. So that only puts a capper on these things. Following my usual protocol with Trump documents, I'm probably in the minority here. I don't believe that Jim Comey was actually fired. I have not inspected the letter, and as you know, I do not accept written communication from the president without forensic examination. If they would like me to believe that he's issued a directive or an executive order or has signed a bill or has sent me a nomination, he is going to have to come in front of me and do it, and I'm going to have to take a good look at him and make sure it's really him. I think there's some possibility that the real Donald Trump, such as he may be, is in a medically induced coma in the basement of the White House, and they're simply using the robo-signing machine. Bannon has locked himself in a room somewhere, and Kushner's skiing, I guess. So I'm not really sure what's going on at the White House. But we can round up the headlines and see what other people think is going on at the White House. Greg Dworkin, on this historic occasion, joining us from Connecticut, home of the apparently to Donald Trump, the world's most famous liar about Vietnam. What? Richard Blumenthal? I don't know. He's got a 3-tweet rager going on about that one this morning.
Oh, good. Senator Blumenthal finally, made the big time.
Yeah, he's commenting on the situation, as everyone is. And Trump is, as usual, sitting at, well, I was going to say sitting at home, but he's sitting in our place, on our couch, watching our TV and anger tweeting about it. My advice to him this morning is get up off the couch, go get to work, as if you knew what that meant. But I realized that was our couch, and we really ought to be kicking him out. This is what would happen if your lazy 20-something sons, not yours, Greg, who are still living in your house. See, they're not. They aren't, are they?
No, they're not.
Just checking.
I just looked.
With this. Right.
I looked under the couch. I looked in the closet. Nope, nobody there.
Okay.
I like them. Don't get me wrong.
Yeah,
sometimes they
they're
visit,
welcome
but
to visit.
no, they're not living
Right.
here.
But, people know about this. They're 20-something-year-old sons who are still living at home playing Xbox on the couch. Imagine if they actually suddenly, through no particular merit of their own, became billionaires, but still refused to leave and wanted to eat your Lay's potato chips and watch your TV and complain about all the slackers out there. It would be like, I don't know, the guy we have as president.
Mm. Well, tell me, what relationship is Congresswoman Barbara Comstock to where you live?
Next door.
Next door. She's a Virginia congresswoman.
Yeah, she's mine. She's like my next door neighbor.
Okay.
Now, she's not the next district over. This is it. We're right here. I can walk to her house.
So she represents you?
Yeah, she has that seat.
Okay. Congresswoman Barbara Comstock made the following statement after the termination of her former Justice Department colleague, FBI Director James Comey. Both Democrats and Republicans attacked the FBI director at various times for various reasons and called for his ouster. However, I can't defend or explain tonight's actions or timing of the firing of FBI Director James Comey. The FBI investigation into the Russian impact on the 2016 election must continue. There must be an independent investigation that the American people can trust.
That's a good statement.
That's a Republican.
Yes. I don't know if I believe it, but it's an excellent statement.
Yeah, I don't know if I believe it either, but it doesn't matter. Right. If more Republicans make statements like that, then perhaps your cynical side will say, well, maybe there's something to this and actually something may happen. There's a firestorm this morning. And the part that really strikes me is basically how dumb Donald Trump and his people are. This is from a New York Times story covering it. Mr. Trump may have assumed that Democrats so loathed Mr. Comey because of his actions last year in the investigation of Hillary Clinton's private email server, that they would support or at least acquiesce to the dismissal. But if so, he miscalculated, as Democrats rushed to condemn the move and demand that a special counsel be appointed. And by the way, they spelled counsel correctly in the New York Times.
Good for you, New York Times.
To ensure that the Russia investigation be independent of the president.
Wow.
So basically, however you look at it, and there's multiple stories I have here, including the shock that spread throughout the ranks of current and former FBI officials, with a growing sense of anger among the many Comey loyalists and demands for answers as to why the director had been fired and why now. That's the thing. It's not that he was fired. It's not that Democrats really don't like him. It's the timing. If this is what he wanted to do, he could have done that like 3 days after he was president.
Yes.
But the idea of claiming, which he did, that the reason he was fired is because of how Hillary Clinton's emails were handled, which he did, that's what he claimed, is incredibly ludicrous, and nobody's buying that for a moment. And the only thing that's happened is with this firing, which happened yesterday afternoon, that, there's just more and more calls for independent investigations. And, of course, that comes in two flavors. There's the congressional side. They can put together an independent commission like the Watergate Commission. Or there's the special prosecutor side, which comes in the Justice Department. Both can subpoena, but only the special prosecutor can bring charges.
Okay.
Or at least that's how I understand it.
Okay. Yes. Well, very likely. That is how it's structured. Yes.
Well, it's nice to be right. I mean, but that's my understanding of it anyway. So, it'll be interesting to see. I don't mind having an argument as to whether or not we need a special prosecutor from the Justice Department. Because remember, the Attorney General who recused himself from all of the Russia stuff approved of Comey's firing.
Yes, I understand he wrote the memo.
The Assistant Attorney General had the memo, but in it, it was approved by Sessions.
Yeah.
Who's part of the problem,
some recusal. Of course. Right. Good recusal. Excellent work. Well done.
And the other, it's interesting that Comey had no idea this was coming. Some of the low-level people had no idea it was coming. They scrambled for talking points. By yesterday late evening, Sarah Huckabee and others were now saying the best thing to do is just move on from this Russia thing.
Oh, yeah, sure.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, sure. Exactly. Trump's, let's see. The new stunned Comey, says this Politico report, who saw his dismissal on TV while speaking inside the FBI office in Los Angeles, has startled all but the uppermost ring of the White House advisors, who said grumbling about Comey hadn't dominated their own morning senior staff meetings, which don't mean anything because Trump decides what he wants to do on a whim. Other top officials learned just before it happened and were unaware he was considering it. Nobody really knew. And people all said, what? So, as the article points out, Trump may have added, I like how careful they are, Trump may have added more fuel to the fire he is furiously trying to contain. And he was quickly criticized by a chorus of Republicans and Democrats. The timing of this firing was very troubling, said Senator Ben Sasse, Nebraska Republican. I guess he's reading out of the Susan Collins playbook. Okay. I don't really care how troubled they are. I want to know if they're subpoenaing his tax returns and calling for independent investigations. Do that, and that means something. But being troubled by this is like hopes and prayers when somebody gets shot.
Yeah. Susan Collins didn't even rise to the level of troubled by it. She just said it was okay.
Right. Meanwhile, why now? Well, there's the CNN exclusive, or they claim it's an exclusive, grand jury subpoenas issued in FBI's Russia investigation. They claim that federal prosecutors have issued grand jury subpoenas to associates of former NSA National Security Advisor Michael Flynn, seeking business records as part of the ongoing probe of Russian meddling in last year's election, according to people familiar with the matter. And you have to remember, it wasn't just Comey that was fired. It was also Sally Yates. It was also Preet Bharata from
yes.
New York, the New York prosecutor.
Is, but yes, okay.
So there's a number of people
Everybody.
who seem to have their finger on what's going on with Trump who suddenly are disappearing. And no, I don't think this will stand. I don't think that politically there's a way for Republicans to resist. They'll resist in the first couple of days. People like Rand Paul will say, oh, Democrats, they're being hypocrites because first they hated Comey and now they love him. That's not going to fly. And so you're going to have people like Comstock who I think have a better pulse on what's going on with the constituents. And I think it's going to be very difficult not to have some sort of independent investigation.
Yes. Well, Comstock
basically, folks, this is Watergate 2, and put your hats on.
Beautiful building, by the way, Watergate, terrific. They could really use an update. Something he was probably considering buying, and that's his reference. His frame of reference on Watergate is, not a big deal, but the building was nice. It was okay.
So,
anyway,
I mean, the idea, first of all, that you could have stopped all of these investigations by just getting rid of Director Comey.
Yes.
Is odd because they're not going to stop. And the idea that there's nothing there is crazy. And it turns out, I think, that Donald Trump is everything we said he was, and the Russia investigation is also everything we said it was.
We might be right about these things.
But, if you get his taxes and you see what's going on and do the proper investigation, we'll know.
Yes. Very difficult to get that investigation done. Donald Trump, of course, firing Comey largely, I see Jonathan Chait putting it this way, largely because he believes, and we've known this for some time, that having won the presidency, that means the entire federal government is his personal workforce, and he can just do that sort of thing. And I'm sure he believes that the next FBI director, if by some chance the next FBI director felt like they were under some pressure to continue the investigations, he would just threaten them with firing too. That's just the way he thinks. So he thinks the decision to install him in the White House was a rubber stamp for the idea that it ought to be run like a personal business.
Like his personal business,
Yes.
not like a business,
That is
because
true.
there's no
That's
other
a good
business that
point.
runs like his business.
That's excellent point. A publicly owned Fortune 500 type business, when we're really thinking about putting a businessman in the White House, we're usually thinking about a business person who is also, accountable in some way to shareholders or some outside forces, not somebody who's just got personal holdings that they use to throw their weight around and pretend they have a business and just drain all the assets out of it. That's a different kind of thing, and there's no governance of his business. So there's not even applicable business governance.
Are you there?
Am I there?
For some reason, the voice at your end sort of drowned out there a little bit, so I'm going to speak as if you are.
I am.
Oh, good. But just to highlight that business, a little sidelight, one of our loyal readers sent in this little piece here in Newsweek. Ivanka and Jared are paying discount rent for a Washington house owned by a Chilean who wants approval for Minnesota mining permit.
Yes, I did see that.
Because it's really important that
Cheryl
Ivanka
shared
and
that.
Jared pay discount rent. The poor people can hardly afford places in Washington like
Yes.
rich people can.
By the way, the discount rent is $15,000 a month, but
That's a discount.
Yeah, it's a big house.
Yeah.
I don't know what kind of discount that is. It's not much of a discount for me. I would say, boy, that sounds like full freight. But I think it's a $5.5 million house in this fantastic location. It might be that rent should be higher. But I thought I don't know. I was surprised to see this. Kate Sherrill did share this one with me, and it's an important story to note. I feel like when we knew what they were renting for a long time, and the story behind the house, we got a first round of stories that this was an expensive house and who owned it and what their interests in the American government were. But we were assured at the time that the rent was a straight up market arm's length
it's appropriate
transaction.
and all of that. I mean, I'll leave that for you for later. I don't want to get distracted too much from the Comey story.
Oh, okay.
But the point is, when we talk about Trump running the country like a business, this is the kind of business we're talking about.
Yes.
It's basically funny business.
Of course. They put a punctuation, an exclamation mark on it the day before he fired with Jared Kushner selling green cards in China. A lot of speculation that was either why he was laying low during all of this, or whether he actually was pushing for Comey's firing so that he didn't get called on the green card sales. I don't know which.
Right. So let me read to you some of the pundits. I collected some of the tweets from last night and put it on the pundit roundup this morning. We have Ryan Nobles pointing out statements flooding in from both parties show bewilderment. Many not fans of Comey, but also not sure Trump should be the one to fire him.
Yes.
Bob Casey, this is Nixonian. Deputy Attorney General Rod Rosenstein must immediately appoint a special counsel. So that would be the independent investigation coming from the has prosecutorial abilities side. David Ignatius in the Washington Post, the Comey debacle only magnifies the Russia mystery. The Comey putsch heightens the mystery at the center of the Flynn case. Why Trump didn't react sooner to warnings about Flynn's involvement with Russia. Why didn't Trump listen to President Barack Obama's caution against hiring him? Why did Trump wait 18 days before removing his national security advisor after urgent advice that Flynn could be blackmailed? Cory Booker, it's even more important that an independent special counsel be appointed. Ken Delanian from NBC, a reporter at NBC, says, former senior FBI officials tell him, I believe the intent here is to replace him with someone who will close the Russia probe. That's where Christie comes in, Chris Christie, Governor Christie, or Rudy Giuliani, who himself might be under indictment soon, who knows. Paul Krugman, I've thought all along that Trump was a legitimacy crisis waiting to happen, but so soon, so dramatically, wow. Aaron Blake said, while I greatly appreciate, and this was part of the letter that Trump sent to Comey, while I greatly appreciate you informing me on 3 separate occasions that I am not under investigation, that's what Trump put in the letter.
Yeah.
I finished the sentence. You're nonetheless fired for criticizing my golf game and commenting on the size of my hands.
Yeah.
But that first line there, while I greatly appreciate you informing me on 3 separate occasions that I am not under investigation, is that true? Was Comey talking to Trump during these investigations? Is that appropriate? Is that what happened?
I should hope not. Although maybe it is what happened, in which case Comey should be fired, but not by Donald Trump.
Well, I mean, you go back and look at his decisions about Clinton's emails, which in retrospect, the further we get away from it, I realize that the election is very close and people are still raw about this. But what a bad series of decisions. And yes, he did deserve to be fired, but the timing is what matters. And the fact of the matter is that as annoyed as I am about the handling of Comey's discussions about Clinton's emails, which I personally think, yes, did throw the election, and that has obvious ramifications, as did multiple other things in a multivariate situation.
Yeah.
Right now, the issue on the table is the Russia investigation, and that, forgive me, trumps everything. And so if you're going to fire Comey, fire him day two. If you're firing him now, it's because you are worried that grand juries are starting to meet and issue subpoenas, and the ring is closing around you, the noose is closing around your neck. And that's why he got fired now. This is Watergate.
There's a lot to that, obviously, and much to be investigated about it. But, yeah, I mean, even yesterday, just before the firing, on the air here, I was saying that, what's being revealed about the way Comey handled things, it was distressing to say the least. And I was like, this guy's really got to get his act together or straighten up and fly right. He did deserve to be fired. It just couldn't have been done this way, both at this time, by this person, under these circumstances. It's nuts. And it was really surprising to me is that with the totality of circumstances that they didn't anticipate a backlash.
Because they're stupid.
I guess.
There's just no other explanation for it.
Maybe that's it. They just thought,
They're stupid. They're stupid people who are doing stupid things.
Well. And
so as a result, you wind up seeing this, and you're looking for like this really, really big explanation. Look, they're either idiots, which is completely plausible.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah, I'm with you.
Or it's all about trying to get rid of this investigation.
Yeah.
It's one of the two.
There's very little other explanation out there that makes
and by the way,
sense.
they can both be true at the same time.
That is easily true as well. I don't really understand what was driving them otherwise. So
if the idea, just to step back a little bit, if the idea here were to try to dampen down the Russia investigation, this has the exact effect of pouring gasoline on a fire.
Yes.
So what's
that's
the sense
the part
of that?
I don't understand that they didn't see.
They lost Barbara Comstock.
Yeah. Well, that's not it. It's a bad thing, certainly, but
you don't want to lose Barbara Comstock.
You don't. I wouldn't mind losing Barbara Comstock, but it's all right.
2018, there's going to be a lot of these guys lost, and the question is going to be who wants to go down with the ship.
Yeah, that's where things will start to change a little bit, but I don't know that it means that they will abandon ship in the way that they should be doing it. That is to say,
we saw this play out with Watergate, with Howard Baker, where's the smoking gun? But eventually the pressure got to be to the point where even they couldn't stop it.
Well, we'll see how much more momentum there is for this. Armando, of course, champing at the bit to join us.
Before Armando comes in, I have to give him the thing that I thought would be the tickler to get him on, because I know he follows this closely, and this is one of his most admired politicians. ABC News says Marco Rubio was surprised by Comey's firing, but it's a decision the president's made and will go from here. Dan Pfeiffer tweeted that and said, area man caught off guard while waiting to see which way the political winds will blow.
I guess that's it. It's a decision the president has made, though. He's right about
Yes, well, I have to decide whether or not I'm going to comment on it or just disappear and go back to the bunker.
I guess. I'm not even, now that I think about it, I don't think I can even validate that. I'm not sure it's a decision that the president made. I'm not. He signed the letter, but yeah.
He signed the letter. He signed stuff that people put in front of him.
Right. Pretty much. And I think maybe it's entirely possible that somebody just put another really bad idea in front of him and he signed it. It sounds like maybe and apparently the latest reporting is that he has been deliberating on it for the past couple of days. And it sounds to me maybe like that idea was put in front of him initially, like
which
maybe
idea?
Just Bannon handed it to him and he was like, I think he did have a sense of the possible backlash and said, and that's why we then got memos from the Deputy Attorney General and a sign off from the AG, and then.
Well, the way the Politico
idea.
and some of the other people are spinning this or telling the TikTok, as they like to do,
Yes.
is the idea that Trump was furious at Comey for not backing him up about claiming that
That's the most amazing
that Obama was wiretapping him.
Yeah.
And started to ask people to come up with reasons to fire Comey, and then was looking for a good time.
And
so this whole idea that he didn't, in other words, they were waiting for him to make a mistake. Then he goes and testifies in front of Congress and claims that Huma Abedin's emails were thousands of them were forwarded to Anthony Weiner, which actually was not the case. And FBI had to back off on that statement, but it was a mistake. And Trump said, here it is, fire him over this. Set up a memo, come up with a reason to do it, and then we'll let him go. And then the grand jury indictments start to come out today. And, now.
Yeah, I guess.
That's the way the timeline gets put together. Here's an interesting thing. Ryan Lizza, reporter, puts this up on a tweet, which I thought was fascinating. This is part of the first article of impeachment drawn up during Watergate. At point 4, interfering or endeavoring to interfere with the conduct or investigation by the Department of Justice of the U.S., the FBI, the Office of Watergate Special Prosecution Force, and congressional committees. And that was an article of impeachment for Richard Nixon.
Yes.
Just good reminder.
But hey, we didn't vote on
because Trump said something about, I think he tweeted this morning, everybody hates Comey, and when all this blows over, you'll thank me for doing this. That was a tweet, or the essence of a tweet that he sent. And I read that and I said, we absolutely will thank you. You just gave us grounds to impeach you.
Yes, for that we are grateful.
And we are.
Yeah, all right. Well, I mean.
I'm not saying that, tomorrow he resigns. I just want to point out that something like this grows and grows, and the political pressure is going to be enormous, and including on Republicans. They happen to have the House. They have the Senate. They're the ones that are going to have to determine whether or not this gets further investigated. Some of them already are claiming or stating that they're going to need some sort of independent counsel. The fact of the matter is that this is not going to go away. This is only going to get bigger. And it's, politicians are not real good at standing against pressure. They're just not.
All right. No, I agree. And it took a year and a half, 2 years, Watergate wise.
And that's an excellent point. And so, don't determine what Republicans are going to do. I always say this about Trump voters. Don't determine what they're going to do based on 100 days in.
Oh.
Sometimes things take a while to develop.
Yes.
Right? And if there are grand jury subpoenas going out, kind of hard to blow off as fake news.
Yes. What's so grand about that jury anyway? I'd like to know. And so would Donald Trump.
Well, you'll explain it to us because it's all a process.
Yeah. All right. Well, I'll have Armando join in. I know by last.
Is he here?
He's not yet, but any minute I would expect him. He's asking already. All right. But he pledged last night 9:15. I mean, I want him.
Yeah. Well, he figured by 9:15 I'd get everything wrong, but that's why he wants to come on. I'm going to have to run a little bit early today because I've got stuff to do at my day job.
You're fired.
Yeah, but I wanted to get some of this stuff in.
Yeah.
And I wanted it to be clear that that I'm laughing. I'll tell you why I'm laughing in a minute. But I wanted to be clear about where we stood. This is a tweet from New York Times bestselling pseudonym for two rapscallions, writer and producer of The Expanse on an invention called TV. His name is James S.A. Corey, and he tweets, Comey now learns the lesson that I understood instinctively as a teenager reading Tolkien. Sauron does not care about the orcs.
Okay. Where is this coming from?
James S.A. Corey tweet.
Okay.
See, the point here is that Trump will throw anybody and everybody under the bus in a moment except for Ivanka.
Yes, possibly. Although I read it
because he and Ivanka are basically the same person.
Yes. Largely true.
Ivanka is mini-me. And so this entity, the two of them, are basically against the world, and everything that's done is done to enrich them. And they will throw anybody, be it Paul Ryan or Mitch McConnell, Senate Majority Leader or anybody, including Kellyanne Conway, anybody, will get thrown under the bus if they get in their way.
I guess that's largely true.
Sauron does not care about the orcs.
I did read a story yesterday about the one instance that anyone could put their finger on of Trump throwing Ivanka sort of under the bus. Apparently, she was very pointed in her insistence on a forthright apology for the Access Hollywood tapes, and he wouldn't. He dug his heels in and said no way, and she burst into tears and ran out of the room. So it's a good thing to keep in mind, I think. He'll throw her under, too, occasionally.
David Frum already has something up on the Atlantic. This is not a drill. The firing of FBI Director James Comey poses a question. Will the law answer to the president or the president to the law? If the president does it, it's legal. Where does that sound familiar from? Oh, yeah, I remember. Watergate.
Yes, and people have believed that was wrongly decided ever since. And they've been in every Republican government since, and they're back now.
Right. Anyway, I thought that would be a good, introduction to the rest of the show. But, there's a lot going on, and there's a lot going on that turns out to be building. I mean, this is certainly by no means the end of it. And so by the end of today, we're going to be seeing a lot of quite interesting takes on.
Yes. All the takes. Oh, now I don't hear you.
Well, I cut him off. I finally succeeded in getting him to shut up.
Armando!
That may have been it.
I couldn't resist. Greg, go back to your point. I apologize.
All the takes. So we were going to hear all the hot takes today?
Yeah, and the question's going to be, really, everybody's going to be watching Republicans today to see what they do.
Yeah,
I mean, I'll tell you this. The day that Marco Rubio says something interesting will be a day to reckon anyway.
Okay, but I can disagree right now. I'm interrupting
there we
to
go.
disagree. Yes, the Republicans are the ones to watch, but you know who's more important to watch?
Yeah.
You know who's more important to watch right now, Greg?
I was just kidding about Rubio. Rubio is not important at all. Go ahead.
No, he is actually. He's important as an indicator. It's the media. The media. They had a good morning, I think, today.
They had a wonderful morning. They are all over this. They finally have a story they can deal with.
Exactly. It's actually one of the things that Trump didn't get is this fits into their rubric of scandal. They understand.
Not just that, Armando. It fits into their idealized hero of Watergate 2, where they play a role.
Yes.
There's a Pulitzer in this.
There could be.
Yes.
Absolutely.
That's why they're so, you can't blow us off on this. Our whole profession is under siege, and this is going to bring us back to the top of our game.
All right.
We didn't see that coming at all.
They're going to prove all of us who've been criticizing them wrong, and this is the story that's going to do it.
Yeah,
Yes.
I have to leave because I'm agreeing with Armando. We can't have this.
No, but so you probably started your roundup with that point, but it seems to me almost the most critical point. Because you're right. Look, Rubio is a weasel. That's what he is, and he proved it yet again. But
yeah, I mentioned him because he's your weasel. I mean, we have our own, but he's yours.
I certainly follow him around, calling him a weasel. That's for sure. Outside his house, throwing rocks at his windows, calling weasel.
Yeah, and Barbara Comstock belongs to David, and I blame him personally for it.
Right. But the thing is, I look at it. I actually think a better bellwether in some respects is going to be Lindsey Graham, and Lindsey Graham
who was called for business ties to Russia as far as from his committee.
Yeah, but think of it this way, and it all depends. Like, look, Scarborough's all in. He can't walk back what he said. It seems to me. I guess he could. But
at the wedding, he will.
Yeah,
at the wedding, he will.
At
when Trump resides in the wedding,
right.
It could happen. And Graham goes on the shows this morning, and you said that last night he was like, well, he was compromised, which he was. And you made a point that I was going to disagree with, but then you got it right in my view. If you're going to, Comey was fireable. Everything Rosenstein wrote in that memo is absolutely correct.
Yeah, but it's all about timing.
Absolutely. The point is, this isn't new. You knew all this.
Yes.
When you were sworn in. In fact, you knew it when you were praising him on the campaign trail. And when Sessions was praising him on the campaign trail, you knew it was wrong. And you can't pretend to, Ron Rosenstein came in 2 weeks ago and told me, so now I know. No, you knew. There's nothing that Rosenstein wrote that you did not know. He put it on a piece of paper, but it was everything there was no investigation. There was no survey of FBI morale. That was all nonsense. That's why this doesn't fly. And frankly, the media's been good. It says, what are you talking about? Now you decided to fire him? You could have fired him on day 2. Or if you didn't want to fire him because you wanted to be dignified about it, which of course, as we know based on yesterday, he wasn't being dignified, you could have waited till it was time, question of reappointment.
The fun part is going to be watch, and I've already seen it once, but we'll see it more. I guess Woodward would probably be on MSNBC and Bernstein on CNN, but they're going to bring those guys back a lot over the next week.
Woodward will be another bellwether. He is very prone to defending Trump.
Yes, exactly. I mean, Bernstein's already out there that this is Watergate too, but
right.
It'd be very interesting. And they had their disagreements back in the day. It'd be really interesting to hear what he has to say about this. And the Gergens and some of the people that, the veterans that have been there. I mean, I think they're the ones that are going to be pointing out in the media that this is not it's going to go away tomorrow because we want to change the subject kind of thing. It's a big story.
I thought a real test last night was when they started to try to float that, the Democrats all wanted him fired story tried to get out there.
That was amazing because that actually is what they thought, and that fell over so flat.
The media just said, get out of here.
So did the Democrats.
Well, the Democrats, of course, were going to say it, but you always have to worry. The only one who bid on that was Fournier. But, of course, he's Fournier, so that's what he does. Not even Dowd or Saliza or anybody else. Well, Saliza gave it a try, got slapped down, and never said another word about it.
Right. The other person that actually, it was interesting because I love him for his legal reporting was Pete Williams. I don't know if you saw this yesterday, but on MSNBC when the story broke, Williams said, this is what's going on. It's a big deal. He got all of that. And then he said, but the fact that this has all been, and he said this on the air, and this is why Pete Williams shouldn't do politics. He said the fact that this was approved by the Attorney General and the Assistant Attorney General will take some of the heat off of Trump for doing this. And your reaction was my reaction. Thank you for quoting me. And that's exactly what I did. I laughed at the TV and I said, this is insane. Please do not have him comment on politics. This is wrong.
Yeah. That's an embarrassing moment for him. My God.
Yeah. So, we won't see him repeating that today.
I guess there's some, while our beat reporters have had a great day, our cable bookers have not.
Right. Something along those lines. Anyway, I'm going to leave you guys to talk about this, but,
I don't mean to drive
thanks
you
so
out.
much for listening to the show for all these months and, learning a little bit about how to interpret things because it seems like you're getting it right lately, and I commend you for that.
Yeah, well, that's look at you. Okay, yeah, I learned from the best there, Greg. But why are you leaving? You got to go do some work, right?
I got to go do some work. I love being on with you. I wish you were on more often, but I got to run and I got to go take care of some people and do some stuff.
All right. Well, I'm gonna monopolize David's time now.
Well, there's some stuff to talk about this, I would think.
Yeah, there's a million things. Even things this morning. The Roger Stone component is fascinating because Trump just
please get to that. For those who don't know, Roger Stone is an ex-Nixon guy, and he's as they like to say in the business, an informal Trump advisor. And you'll tell that story and let people know what's going on.
Yes, I'm playing the.
So Roger, take care, and I will talk to you tomorrow.
All right. Thanks very much, Greg.
Thanks, Armando, for coming on.
Thanks, Greg.
Churning.
Did you hear the Roger Stone story?
Roger Stone, what is he? Someone casting him as the Penguin in a Batman movie? What?
That's what he should do. That actually would be pretty interesting casting. He got a big mouth and he decided to tell reporters he was the guy behind it. He told Trump to fire Comey.
It's the first time that might be welcome in the White House. For Roger Stone claiming credit for these things. Oh, yeah, it was him.
No, but the kicker is Trump tweets that Roger Stone's lying, that he hasn't spoken to him.
This is great. So, look, I brought you a gift. No gifts. I hate you all.
So I said, listen, you
All
know,
right.
I was half joking, but it's actually true. First of all, Stone is clearly a target of this investigation.
I would think so.
He should not be talking about the investigation with the President of the United States, who may also be a target of the investigation.
Yes.
So
But they
when
are.
Stone says that he was talking to the President of the United States not only about the investigation, but whether they should fire the chief investigator of that investigation.
That seems like what all of the Trump voters wanted.
This is prima facie obstruction of justice.
Yeah.
It's a criminal. There is a predicate of a crime. And what Roger Stone said he did.
Uh-oh. Well, I was just kidding then.
So when Trump says, I never talked to him. Well, did he talk to Reince Priebus? Did he talk to Steve Bannon? Did you get communications from him? Look,
He's not even that clever. He talked to him.
yes, I actually
did.
think they did. So here's my point.
He just says I never did.
Trump's denial, I can't, that's nice. Criminals always deny they did it. We need to investigate. I need your phone records. I need your logs. I need to see and I need to see Roger Stone's log to see if he talked to you. I need Roger Stone to come in and testify under oath. I need you to come in and testify under oath, Mr. President.
Well, that's illegal. Everybody knows that from Clinton.
Well, obviously it's not. Now, what is not possible, you have to impeach and remove before, but the president, as we know, can very well be questioned by the FBI and questioned by a grand jury. That there's nothing that obstructs that, and that, yes, is Jones v. United States and also United States v. Nixon. So the reality is, this is funny, but it's also serious. Roger Stone's big mouth, frankly, says there needs to be an investigation. By the way, Schumer's talking on the floor. I don't know what he's saying, and I apologize for interrupting that coverage. But
That's all
I think one question I would have is he's going to say, special prosecutor before new FBI director. But I'm just curious. People say he should, stop the Senate from working. And one thing that I wanted to ask you about is, well, what exactly can he do to do that?
Well, he can certainly make things move slowly. I mean, one of the things I have always, this may be the sort of crisis that actually requires something like this, is I've always thought that they should just simply stop accepting routine operations of everything, not just, for instance, requiring votes on everything or having quorum calls about everything or not giving up unanimous consent on anything. But this would be a great time to start implementing my policy on the president's written communications. I would say not only disrupting the Senate operations, but disrupting the White House operations too. I don't know what sort of tolerance there would be and what sort of mechanisms you could use, but honestly, there's usually daily written communication back and forth between the White House and the Senate. Well, when there's legislation moving anyway. When the president puts forth a nominee, whether for FBI director or anything else, at this point, I really, honestly, just to make trouble, would stand and say, hey, the Secretary of the Senate says that he's carrying us a written communication from the President of the United States, and I am not 100% certain that it is a written communication from the President of the United States, for one thing. I have no real reason to believe that he's got the independent faculty to make such a communication. It's true that very often aides are communicating for him, but I don't even know for sure that he signed this thing. I mean, seriously, I want a forensic examination of this thing. In other words, if the president wants to communicate something to the Congress, I believe he should have to come here and make it in front of us. I can't any longer afford him the benefit of the doubt that was routine with previous presidents, that something appearing on White House stationery over his signature is his. I no longer believe he knows what he's signing. I no longer believe he's signing what he purports to be signing. I think somebody else may be doing it. I don't know. But in any case, I'm also not particularly interested in this guy's nomination for FBI director, should that come. So it wouldn't even matter if it really was a valid communication from the president. And I mean, that would be an outrageous thing to do, and there'll be a huge fight over it. And they may say there's no mechanism by which you can call for a vote on whether or not to accept a written communication from the president. We just simply grant that. Oh, well, I appeal that ruling. Well, what ruling? It's just I'm reading you the rule. Yeah, I think you're reading it wrong. We need to have a vote. Well, I'll vote. I move to table your motion to have a vote. Fine. Let's vote on your motion to table then. And do it all day long. All right, we've tabled the motion. Fine. Okay, so we're going to, now what? Where do we stand in our parliamentary procedure? We've tabled my motion to vote on whether or not to accept the written communication from the president. You now think that means that we have voted to accept it? No, we've just voted to table the motion not to accept it. Where do we, I call for another vote. No, you can't. We already did this. Did we? I appeal that ruling. What? You can't. There's no rule. Yes, there is. I just do it all day long, to be honest. And, I don't know I don't think that's really that's not something that's gonna move the public. They're not gonna say, wow, look at how many votes they're taking on motions to table things. They're not gonna get it, but, it should be clearer than ever that there's just not going to be any room for any cooperation on anything ever again until there's some sort of acceptable investigation taking place. And really, there's not going to be any kind of acceptable. The whole thing, the idea of people keep conflating the independent investigations and special counsels and independent counsels. I guess we could do well to clarify all of that. The old independent counsel statute, where there was a prosecutor investigating the issues that the president literally did not have the authority to fire, although I'm sure you would find some people disputing even that. It has expired and was never renewed, and the only alternative we have is the idea of a special counsel or special prosecutor who the president can fire directly. That brings us back to the Watergate situation. It's why we had an independent counsel statute at all post-Watergate, when we found out, well, the president, as terrible as it is politically, the president does have the authority to fire the special prosecutor, so we should not rely on that. We should have independent prosecutors instead. And then, more or less the first time out of the box, the independent prosecutors went bananas. And they were free-ranging, multi-directional investigations of anything that, even had a hint of possible scandal about it. We all remember where our independent counsels went, and everybody seemed more or less happy to see that statute expire. But the idea of being able to install someone who's firing proof by Trump, that doesn't exist anymore. So that's something I think we ought to be clear about going into in the demands for an independent investigation. There's literally no such thing anymore unless it's conducted by the United Nations or something.
I was listening to you and Schumer at the same time. You were more interesting, to be honest with you.
I'm sure Schumer's being diplomatic. There's not too much he can do.
Well, he did. He's asking for the special prosecutor. He made a nice senatorial speech, which, it's another way to say zzz. But, he makes the point. Rosenstein said if he thinks it's appropriate to appoint a special prosecutor, well, this is pretty appropriate right now.
Yeah.
Appoint a special prosecutor. The things you were saying about the workings of the law, it's absolutely true. He can fire him. And as it did with Scooter Libby and all these other things, the pressure that is imposed, it's pretty funny when they focus back out. None of the Republicans were there for Schumer's speech. It's kind of funny. That I look at the pull-out of who was there. But the idea is that politically it's very costly to remove a special prosecutor. And as far as I know, even in the post-independent counsel period, there hasn't been a removal of a special prosecutor.
No.
Well, Robert Fisk was removed because a court said that it was improper because it wasn't independent. I don't know if you remember that. Because Janet Reno had picked Robert Fisk, and that's when Sintel and Jesse Helms met in Virginia and decided Ken Starr was the man to get it done. And lo and behold, he was, in a manner of speaking. The interesting thing about this story, and I go back to the media's reaction that Greg and I were talking about before, is Trump clearly was unhinged here. Because this is, on any level, you're an evil person and you're thinking about this and you're trying to obstruct this investigation and you're trying to do all these things. Firing Comey at this point is kind of stupid. Not kind of, completely stupid, because today's all Russia. Today's all special prosecutor. It does the reverse. I mean, if you're going to just shut it down, then just shut it down some other way. I don't know what other way, but firing Comey was the wrong way. It really let the media get its teeth into this story. It gave them, the great Watergate parallel. It's, it basically they're re-engaged now, and maybe tomorrow it'll change, but certainly today they're just not taking any guff. I watched Chris Cuomo interview Kellyanne Conway, and he was just, he didn't accept a word she said. Every single sentence was challenged, which maybe he should always do, but he's certainly doing it now.
Oh, that's good. I understand she elicited big eye rolls from Anderson Cooper, but, again, the question is, well, what's she doing there to induce eye rolls in the first place?
Right.
That's a person
I think,
that you
though,
just say
but
doesn't
here's the
belong on
thing,
television.
from a media perspective or a journalistic perspective, having her there,
yeah,
as long as you challenge the nonsense, works, it seems to me. I don't have a problem with letting the White House present its person, tell its lies, as long as the person asking the question says, but that's a lie.
Yes, that is helpful. One additional layer of protection that I think that they need with Kellyanne Conway in particular is to not only to say that, but at some point during the interview, I don't know whether you do it at the top or at the end of the interview, I think it would help a great deal if they said, by the way, I just would like our listeners to know, we brought you here, Kellyanne, for a very specific reason. You are well known both inside of the administration and out as the person assigned to the most ridiculous situations, because it appears you're the highest ranking person willing to lie most blatantly on behalf of the White House, and we just brought you here literally to illustrate that point. Thank you for having done it. We have to go for a break. We'll be right back. I think that's the way to cap it when she's on. Everybody knows now when Kellyanne Conway is on our air, it's only for the purpose of proving to you that this White House will stop at nothing.
They will stop at nothing, and this is an important.
If there's anybody
moment.
Who didn't believe that they would simply come out and lie out their asses, we have joining us now a guest who will prove exactly that. Kellyanne Conway, employed for no other reason but to lie out her ass. Thank you for joining us, Kellyanne. What complete steaming load of bullcrap have you to state for us today? Go. And, let her do the eye rolling for once.
Exactly. Well, listen, here's the thing that's on a serious note. Donald Trump is capable of anything. Declaring martial law, abolishing the courts. He has no compunction in doing
he's prone
anything.
To it, yes.
Canceling the election. I'm serious. Donald Trump would do anything that he can get away with. That's just a fact, right? Do you disagree?
I think so. Yeah, no, I don't disagree. I disagree that only in the most technical sense that he can do these things, that he can say them, yes, and that he would have no internal filter that would tip him off to the incredible damage that would be done by saying them. Also, yes.
No, I'm just saying, if it was up to him,
Right.
If nobody stopped him, he's capable of all those
And
things.
in his view, if he's stopped, and depending on the situation, if he's stopped by legal mechanisms, he'll be angry about it certainly, but he'll also say, well, yeah, so the system works.
Yeah. Well, no,
I'm just throwing out.
didn't work.
I'm just throwing out.
Right.
I'm just throwing out suggestions. Now, if it happens that they're totally unconstitutional, I have people for that. They tell me it's unconstitutional. Okay, fine. What else can I do?
Well, nobody tells him that until a court does. I mean, and then it's an outrageous
Then he doesn't
court, and I'm
believe
going to break it up.
Right, and he doesn't believe it because none of my people said this was a possibility. You must be making this up. Well, they're just all sycophants. They didn't want to tell
I'm
you.
just relying on that great legal mind, Judge Napolitano.
Yes, and not bothering with his White House counsel.
Right. Counsel. How about that McGahn guy? My God, what?
Well,
talk about having no self-respect. Jesus.
And no understanding. I get what's it? I forget what his background is. I mean, does he just have? Didn't he have some government background? He must.
Probably. He's probably some Republican hack who's been in and out of government.
Yeah, but I can't.
There's a bunch of those.
Yeah, I got to look that up because I was astonished the day before the firing that in the Yates testimony we learned that his big pushback on the briefing was, what do you care? Why? What concern is it of the Department of Justice if two White House officials internally lie to one another? Well, that's the whole basis of security clearance, etc.
Yeah, who cares that we lied?
Yeah.
No big deal.
I guess not.
Yeah, it's security clearances. It's frankly everything, because what happens is, if in that particular case, Flynn lied in theory, we're told, to Pence, and Pence went out and lied to the public based on that lie. So why do I care? Because somebody lied based on that lie to the American people. I mean,
there are representations that are supposed to be being made all along here that are the basis for the authorization for making decisions on behalf of the American people that otherwise either implicate or would otherwise abrogate their constitutional rights, but which courts are willing to accept if you're willing to make a decision, stand by it, and you can justify the decision. If it's lies all the way down, then, it's going to be a big pain in the ass for all of us to impeach you and throw you out of office and establish that all of the times that you, abrogated constitutional rights and constitutional processes, you were in fact not entitled to do it the whole time. We just assumed you were because we assumed that people weren't lying to each other inside the White House. It's a lot of, this tips a lot of levers when you find out that it's BS through and through.
Yeah. Oh, no, absolutely. And, of course, this to bring you back to Comey, this whole why Comey was fired, it's the height. I've never seen such chutzpah ever to say that he got fired because of what he did to Hillary Clinton during the election.
That was an interesting thought.
That is an FU of epic proportions. I've never seen anything like it.
That's something you can get away with floating through Jeff Lord on CNN. But when it comes to let's commit this to, to commit it to paper and to say that this is the real reason and this comes out of the White House, it's for spinmeisters to float, not for the president to cite as a real reason. I mean, even if he hadn't spent the entirety of the campaign saying that Hillary Clinton ought to be in prison for all of this, I mean, what could move somebody from the position of saying that she ought to be in jail to, she was very unfairly treated by the FBI.
Yeah, I mean, and Kellyanne, one of Kellyanne's good moments this morning was her concern that Comey had misstated facts with regard to Huma Abedin.
Yes. Right. Yeah, we all believe that. You misstated facts as with respect to Huma Abedin. You're fired.
I mean, Trump kept... listen, this is what I've been thinking about. What could he do next to show even more he doesn't care what anybody thinks. And you were tweeting about it this morning.
Yeah.
Rudy Giuliani was at the hotel.
Yeah. That would probably help signal that.
If he nominates Giuliani for FBI director, wow.
Well, that would be an exciting confirmation hearing. By the way, I'm not entirely convinced that I'm not 100% certain he's going to nominate anybody. He may just say, well, why don't we just float along with an acting FBI director?
Well, think of it this way. Who can he nominate that's somehow going to tamp this down? Nothing really. But think of it. He's going to have to nominate basically almost an open Democrat. Someone Holder-like. Loretta Lynch, for Christ's sakes, or something like that.
What,
to
in
say,
order
okay,
to not be criticized for it? Yeah.
Who's the nondescript FBI person who can come in and do this?
I don't know. Nobody. I don't know. I don't know if there's anybody that's acceptable to. I mean, that would prompt Democrats to say, "Yeah, I'll stand down for this and just vote yes." Although, who knows? Once there's a nomination made and hearings have been held and the thing comes to the floor and they can't filibuster it, I shouldn't say that because some
I
Democrat
agree.
will
Listen,
say,
if he
maybe
gets
I will.
51 votes, Rudy Giuliani or Donnie Jr. can be the next FBI director.
Right. I did say a great tweet. There's a new FBI director. Somebody photoshopped a fake mustache onto Ivanka.
Right. That was very funny.
Travanka Trump. Yeah.
And that's a point, frankly, that's a thing that's run through, frankly, your coverage of our Congress. You guys keep thinking these rules mean something. They get it. The majority votes, and all those rules mean nothing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Filibuster, anything.
Well, nothing illustrated that better, although it did it in slow motion, I guess, comparatively. Nothing illustrated that more clearly, I thought, than the emoluments problems. Like,
yes.
Everybody knows that there's only one place where either you can speak up and say this emolument stuff doesn't matter, or says no, this is grounds for impeachment or some sort of super serious censure, and that was with Congress, and they haven't said a word about it. They haven't even had the courage to simply say it doesn't matter. They just ignore it. Everybody's watching it in real time.
Case in point. Breaking news. Mitch McConnell rejects call for special counsel, independent committee, saying new Trump-Russia investigation would, quote, impede current work.
Yes, the current work of what? Exactly. Joan could tell us what's happening in Congress.
Is she coming in?
No, I think she's watching to see what the new business is.
The Senate, but it's over.
Yeah.
So she,
well.
We'll see what she does, because she can tell us what this current work is. I assume it's cutting Medicaid to give tax cuts for the rich, but I don't know what else is on the agenda.
Not sure. We can take a look and see what's out there schedule wise, and it may just be that they just need an extra hand on the front page today dealing with this, looming constitutional crisis. But I don't know. I don't know what they think they're doing. Let's see what's up on the floor. All of that may just fall by the wayside as they just say, well, there's not going to be any business going on today.
Well, I just think that
protest.
I think that whatever you say that they needed to do, object. I call for a vote on that ruling, even though there's no ruling. Quorum calls, whatever. I honestly think that to a degree that's a sort of a quasi civil disobedience approach. But at this point, and you focus it on this Comey firing and no special prosecutor, and say that's what it's about. And until this gets agreed to, we're going to not work with you because you are an accomplice to an obstruction of justice.
Yeah. And you have to put it that way. And I mean, I don't know how else to explain it to you. Like, okay, so here's Mitch McConnell, you say, rejects calls for a special prosecutor because they got to get to work on something else, right? Whatever the day's business is. And I can tell you what that is now. There can be no special prosecutor, or the discussion of it is inappropriate because Mitch McConnell has made a motion to proceed to House Joint Resolution 36. So there you go. Now, what is HJ Res 36, you might ask? Well, it's the Congressional Joint Resolution of Disapproval regarding methane rules. The motion to proceed is expected at approximately 10 a.m., and if the motion to proceed is agreed to, there would be up to 10 hours of debate, equally divided on a vote prior to passage. So once again, another one of these, essentially, the Congressional Review Act bills, which is the only thing they've been able to do because they have no other legislative agenda and no way to bring any
the
of
budget.
The rest of their. Well, they're not ready with it. They're not ready with the tax thing. They're not ready with the healthcare thing. They don't have any, and nothing that they have to bring to the floor that's subject to a filibuster. And maybe that's what they ought to be spending their time on, is nuking the rest of the filibuster today.
Well, I think it's a bad moment for that. Actually, in some ways, this is the other part of it.
Yes. Okay.
So, I mean, just politically.
Yeah.
Look, you can always do it. Sheer power is sheer power. They can do it.
Yes. No, well, politically, yes, it's a bad day. But they didn't pick that hint up yesterday, so.
Yeah, well, this is
Could
day
they miss it 2
one.
days in a row? Maybe.
I think it's going to be interesting to see. Look, it's not going to be Mitch McConnell at the end of the day who decides this, strangely enough. It's going to be people like Flake, McCain, Sass, and they can decide who they want to be. Look, I mean, we joke about this. Politicians we have no respect for their morals, ethics, and dignity. It's the nature of the beast, but at some point, cooperating with Trump on this is basically cooperating with authoritarianism. And I don't use that word lightly, David. I mean, we're laughing at Trump, but this is serious business. Not because I care that Comey got fired. I really didn't care. If he had fired him on day one, it would have been bad, but that's part of the process. There's a lot of bad people. Jeff Sessions is the freaking AG. All right? I mean, Comey being there or not being there and Comey there was cause to fire him. But that's not the cause that Trump really believes. Trump's cause is that he didn't say what he wanted him to say publicly, because he doesn't. In theory, Trump doesn't know what's going on in this investigation. He doesn't know what's been uncovered. He doesn't know anything, though he may. God knows the FBI probably leaks to him.
Not that would necessarily clue him in on anything either. You could explain it to him.
You're not supposed to, actually. He's supposed to not know anything.
Yeah, you're not supposed to. But I mean, suppose you break all applicable laws and give him a thorough briefing on it, he may still come out of there saying,
not knowing what the hell's going on.
What did I do? What are you talking about? I mean, I think one of the root problems and causes here is that Trump, I think, if you really got his honest opinion about what was going on about things, would say, I don't understand what they're talking about. First of all, I'm president. Presidents talk to Russians all the time. There's a special phone for it. What are you bothering me with this for? Well, these aren't the things you ordinarily talk to Russia about. There's an adversarial relationship, not a cooperative relationship to undermine the American electoral system. That's different. Well, we cooperate with the Russians. That's, what is it? That's what's the word for it? They have a daytime.
Detente.
Yeah, the detente. How do you pronounce this thing? There's a whole word for it. I learned about it in school. Why are you on my back about this? Of course I talked to the Russians. He really doesn't think that there's any difference between the way the president of the United States needs to deal with Russia and the way the president of the Trump organization tried to hammer out hotel deals with the mayor of Moscow.
And what about the P deal?
Yes, right. How about that?
Hey,
tape is real.
It's widely been rumored.
Yeah. Well, it has. It's
I
real.
mean, that's the new standard at the freaking press room in the White House. Is it widely rumored? Therefore, it is.
Yes, right. Many people have told me that they think it's real.
And of course, that's how Trump operates. Listen. It's almost like we're just repeating everything that we've said for the last 2 years.
Yes.
But, it was all fun and games for Beltway and media types until my God, he fired Comey. They were shocked. I was shocked. I won't deny it. Because I just thought it was dumb. He's basically turned. They were against them, but they weren't. There was a group who wanted to find ways to work with them, and of course Republicans liked it because they thought they would get. Well, they got Gorsuch, and they'll get tax cuts, and all these other things, and that's McConnell's game. But now it's serious business. Now am I going to be a party to authoritarianism?
Mm-hmm.
Do they care? Had they been a party to it before? Well, let's think about it. Alberto Gonzalez has been quoted here as saying, well, you can't cover these things up with these kind of maneuvers. And I guess his argument is, and I would know because I tried.
Yes.
And it didn't work. So it's not like it's a moral chasm for them to, be complicit in authoritarianism. So but doing it with Trump, I think, is probably the problem here. If you could couch it in nice suits and country club republicanism, then you could live with it, presumably.
Mm.
But, it's Trump, and it's a little harder to sell.
Well,
oh my God,
man. Let's see.
I've just laughed at something. I'm going to just no comment it.
Okay.
Michael Calderon, CNN hosting town hall debate next Tuesday between Bernie Sanders and John Kasich. Okay, thank you.
All right. I mean, because there's no. What are you going to do? What have you got to cover?
There's no news.
Really, I mean, it's a 24/7 news cycle these days. You got to come up with something. President's firing FBI directors. Everybody's out there lying about it, but look, whatever. Okay, so that'll be good.
No, it's not okay. But it's also I tweet about
what
this.
am I going to do about it?
Nothing. We're not going to do anything about it. But I will point out, and I'm going to point out in a tweet in a second.
All right.
There is a reason why Rachel Maddow is the number one show on cable news now. She has done news. Not gimmicks, not stupid town halls, not understanding Trump voters. She has done news. And in fact, maybe almost obsessively done this Russia story. And remember, she was attacked by The Intercept for doing it.
Yes.
And it turns out maybe she made the right choice and everybody else was like,
doing
it wrong.
Here's a great both sides story for us then. Oh, maybe that's not the two sides. Maybe it's, this is worse. Maybe the Bernie Sanders folks will enjoy this. Although, I don't know. Everybody's implicated in it. Who likes this? I was just thinking about, the last time there was a major, sort of internal DOJ related corruption scandal in a Republican administration and being told there's no there. You're exaggerating. It's hyperbole. You Dems are falling for conspiracy theory, which is a fashionable thing to say. Again, now that Salitza is saying it, I hope no one's joining him in that. We've seen lots of rebuttal for it, but that was Democrats actually saying that at the time. When TPM and others, but chiefly TPM, were digging into the U.S. Attorney story, the U.S. Attorney firings, and there was a big pushback that there's no there. You're exaggerating the situation. There's no scandal here, and then, of course, it turned out to be much bigger than anyone thought, and much more serious than anyone thought. And it never really even got the weight that it was due. Even though it finally did make it into the mainstream media, it really never got the weight that I think it should have been given. And it may have had something to do with the fact that it was still happening under a Republican administration, and they could tamp down on it, and all the media tendencies to normalize everything kicked in there too. But and now here we have, and when I say Democrats were saying that, I guess we're talking about what was the guy's name? He ended up being press secretary for Obama, but he was from Time magazine at the time. Was it Carney? If I remember correctly, he was the one pushing back
Yeah,
on
it was Party.
Yeah, while he was still at Time saying this is a non-story. And in the end, it ended up looking like, well, you got scooped, so you wanted it to be a non-story. And you missed out on something tremendous and meaningful. And even when you grudgingly acknowledged it and changed your mind about whether or not there was any there, it never became the story it should have been. It's, very akin to what's going on now. And here, so now this time, I guess the suspect in this, on the other side, being both sides of this, instead of Comey and I guess you would, or Bernie, Sanders fans might think of him as, corporate media and corporate Democrats, and they wouldn't be far wrong on that. Only this time now it's the Intercept, the anti-corporate, Democrats or liberals or socialists or however they might want to identify themselves these days, probably not as Democrats, certainly not as mainline Democrats. So now it's the job of the Intercept to say, no, this whole Russia thing, you guys have been exaggerating the whole time. It's stupid. You look like idiots pissing up a tree.
I'm about to tweet something at you.
You got to bark up a wrong rope and piss up a tree, I guess. Yeah, what, you're tweeting? Uh-oh.
I don't know. It's something about some Greg Sargent theory on how we can get a special prosecutor. And I'm tweeting it at you. And I'm going to
ponder it.
I don't know what's in it.
Oh.
But I'm curious
if
what he's saying makes sense to you. I don't know what's in it yet. He says it's time to go nuclear here. Republicans who want a special prosecutor can make it happen. Here's how.
Republicans who want it?
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, let's say for the sake of argument we get 3. Just
right.
Arguably.
Well, you add them together with the Democrats and
there's 51. How do we get it on the floor?
And Bernie Sanders.
And Angus King.
Yeah. Right, Angus King.
Right. 46 plus 2 plus 3.
Right. All right. So what's he got to say? The Morning Plum here, or is it further down, or is it?
I'm trying to figure it out. Let's see.
In the wake of Trump's
see if I can point you to it because, this question. I mean, everybody's troubled. The problem is troubled doesn't mean anything. Here's what senators can actually do. That's where it starts.
Yeah, you have a vote.
Wittes?
Oh.
Wittes and Hennis. I don't think Wittes knows anything about Senate procedures, so I'm a little skeptical from the start.
I have a Wittes article open here, so we'll see. We'll flop in between the two of them. All right, go ahead.
Oh, I see. It's saying, it's the FBI director replacement thing. Okay, well, that's actually not that interesting.
Oh, okay.
I thought it was how we can force a special prosecutor.
If it's not, well, if you can just get enough votes to insist on having one, which is not particularly interesting, but it's unexpected because people think, well, Republicans have the majority and they're simply going to use it. But if you can peel off some small portion of their majority and paste it onto our minority, it becomes a working majority. And,
well, listen, if I'm making pipe dreams, maybe I can get 3 of them to switch and vote for Schumer to be the majority leader in the Senate.
Yes, put that on the list next, and also impeachment.
Impeachment, exactly. Boy.
Well, so I did have at the ready in pocket. I thought this might. I haven't read this thing yet, but I thought this might prompt some discussion. There is a Witty's. Ben Witty's and Susan Hennessy article from yesterday, their reaction to the situation over at Lawfare blog. The nightmare scenario. Trump fires Comey, the one man who would stand up to him. And I'm not so certain he was doing that, but certainly the most likely person in the current administration lineup to do so. But anyway, so they describe it this way. Let's say, make no mistake, the firing of James Comey as FBI director is a stunning event. It is a profoundly dangerous thing, a move that puts the Trump-Russia investigation in immediate jeopardy and removes from the investigative hierarchy the one senior official whom President Trump did not appoint and who is known to stand up to power. In a way, yes. Okay, one of the biggest dangers of Comey's firing is that Trump might actually get away with it, ironically, because of Comey's unpopularity among Democrats and on the political left. We warned about this danger immediately after the election. Congratulations, get in line. On November 10th, we wrote that Trump's firing of Comey would be a clear bellwether to both. This is November 10th, though. That's a good point.
Well, they called it.
Yeah, a clear bellwether to both the national
Brexit,
security.
I called it.
Yes, both the national security and civil libertarian communities that things are going terribly wrong. At the time we wrote those words, Comey was deeply unpopular with both the left, which blamed Hillary Clinton's defeat on his 11th hour letter to Congress, and the right, which criticized his decision to recommend that Clinton not be charged over her handling of government emails. Whatever the merit of Comey's actions during the campaign, the fact that he managed to anger both sides of the political spectrum demonstrated his storied political independence. Boy, they really are both siders. And that political independence, we argued, would serve as a critical check against any efforts on the part of President Trump to trample the rule of law. Okay. The FBI director serves a 10-year term precisely in order to insulate against the whims of a president who does not like what or whom the FBI is investigating. While the president has legal authority to fire an FBI director, the fact that Trump has done so under circumstances of an active FBI investigation. No, I didn't. He told me 3 times, which he wasn't allowed to do.
Yeah. Put a pin in that one because I want to talk about that too.
Okay, we'll see if we can remember to come back to that. So while that he's done so under circumstances of an active FBI investigation of the president's own campaign, violates profoundly important norms of an independent, non-political FBI, if that's what we have. The situation has no parallel with the only previous FBI director to be removed by a president. President Clinton's firing of William Sessions, whose ethical misconduct was so extensive that it resulted in a 6-month Justice Department investigation and a blistering 161-page report detailing his illicit activities, including flagrant misuse of public funds. Trump's firing Comey at a time when Comey is investigating Russian intervention in the election on Trump's behalf, and the specific conduct of a number of people close to Trump, undermines the credibility of his own presidency, and it deeply threatens the integrity of and public confidence in ongoing law enforcement and intelligence operations. Don't forget the intelligence side of this. Trump's offered rationale does nothing to assuage the fears we expressed in November regarding the meaning of this event. In announcing Comey's dismissal, the White House released a package of documents which included a statement from Press Secretary Sean Spicer and letters from President Trump, Attorney General Jeff Sessions, and Deputy Attorney General Rod Rosenstein. All 4 documents available, of course, right here. You can click through. The first 3 statements by Spicer, Trump, and Sessions all refer back to the final letter from Rosenstein, which articulates substantively the reasoning behind Comey's dismissal. Spicer's press release states that President Trump, quote, acted based on the clear recommendations, unquote, of both Rosenstein and Sessions, and that a search for a new FBI director will start immediately. Likewise, Sessions' letter refers to the president to the memorandum by Rosenstein. Trump's letter dismissing Comey, for its part, reiterates that he's acting on that recommendation of both Sessions and Rosenstein, declaring, while I greatly appreciate you informing me on 3 separate occasions, we've heard this, I nevertheless concur with the judgment of the Department of Justice that you're not able to effectively lead the Bureau. Trump's clumsy attempt to deny that his own conduct is at issue in the FBI's inquiry is foolish. Comey testified just the other day that the FBI is conducting an investigation to understand whether there was any coordination between the Russian efforts and anybody associated with the Trump campaign. Splitting hairs over whether this does or does not mean that Trump is, quote, under investigation cannot obscure the fact that Trump just fired someone who's leading an investigation that deals with whether his aides, campaign, and White House staff had improper dealings with adversary foreign intelligence service. Rosenstein's memorandum bears the same date as the preceding 3 letters, which is to say May 9th. Note that Rosenstein was only confirmed as Deputy Attorney General on April 25th, making today his 14th day in office. He's a fast worker.
That's the one thing he did for 14 days.
I guess so. The memo, which reads like a bad op-ed, is entitled Restoring Public Confidence in the FBI. It begins by expressing concern that the FBI's reputation and credibility have suffered substantial damage over the past year. Citing Comey's handling of the Clinton email investigation, Rosenstein criticizes Comey's decision to make a public announcement in July 2016, declaring his conclusion that the investigation should be closed, even if, as Comey has stated, Attorney General Loretta Lynch had a conflict with respect to the investigation because of her conversation on an airplane tarmac with former President Bill Clinton. Comey should have followed normal Justice Department procedures rather than announcing his conclusion independently. Furthermore, Comey's July press conference violated the department's principle against releasing information on the subject of a criminal investigation that has been closed without prosecution, Rosenstein's memo says, and you note all true. Notably, Rosenstein does not appear to have waited for the conclusion of a DOJ Inspector General investigation into the matter. Good point also. Rosenstein describes Comey as having supplanted federal prosecutors and assumed command of the Justice Department, declaring the goal of a federal criminal investigation is not to announce our thoughts at a press conference. On this point, Ben and Jack Goldsmith actually wrote at the time, expressing similar sentiments, but that was a lonely position when it happened.
Lonely position? Oh, screw you. Go ahead.
All right. Well, only they looked around and saw a mirrored hall and assumed it was only them. Rosenstein also notes Comey's testimony last week before the Senate Judiciary Committee regarding his decision to release a letter to Congress containing further information about the investigation in October, the famous one. While Comey framed the decision as a choice between speaking or concealing, Rosenstein writes that silence is not concealment in the context of a criminal investigation. Rather, it is normal government procedure. Rosenstein runs through a list of former attorneys general and deputy attorneys general who have publicly criticized Comey's conduct, arguing that his poor assessment of Comey's behavior reflects the nearly unanimous opinions of former department officials. The list counts officials who served under both Republicans and Democratic administrations and includes Judge Lawrence Silberman, Jamie Gorelick, now personal lawyer to Ivanka Trump, Larry Thompson.
Sorry.
Yeah, it's true. It's all here. Michael Mukasey, Alberto Gonzalez, whose name they spell wrong.
Michael Mukasey?
Yeah.
I don't remember that one.
Well, Eric
I thought he
Holder
was
and Donald
complaining that she wasn't indicted.
Here. Okay, well,
Anyway,
on these grounds, Rosenstein writes that Comey must be removed in order to allow the FBI to regain the trust of the public and others in government following Comey's breach of Justice Department
He didn't
norms.
actually say that he had to be removed. Let's be clear.
Oh,
he said
okay.
he needed to accept that what he did was wrong.
All right. Good clarification there.
I mean, it's an important point because people have misstated, including, I'm sorry to interrupt your
No, that's
statement,
fine.
but it's actually an important point. The Trump team is saying he just followed Rosenstein's recommendation. Rosenstein did not recommend putting him out. He said we need an FBI director that understands that what Comey did last year on these things was wrong.
So, in theory, had Comey said, I understand that, it would have been fine.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, it might not have been his preferred outcome, but I wouldn't, that doesn't surprise me that he's in a tough spot. He hasn't been there long, and Deputy AG, you want to say, well, okay, it would perhaps be understood that he ought to be replaced, but I'm not going to be the one that says it. I'm not that high up yet. That is a bit above the pay grade, so I'll just lay it out there. But that's a good point. If I had realized that, I certainly would have interrupted at that point too. All right, let's see how they conclude here. We will leave for another day whether these are the real reasons Comey has been removed or whether they represent a convenient pretext. Notably, the New York Times' Michael Schmidt reports that according to administration officials, senior White House and Justice Department officials had been working on building a case against Mr. Comey since at least last week. Wow, that's a long time ago. Attorney General Jeff Sessions had been charged with coming up for the reasons to fire him. Lots of problems with that, of course, recusal not least among them. Suffice it for now to remind readers that Trump was positively jubilant about Comey's October letter at the time it was issued. The FBI would never have reopened this case at this time unless it were a most egregious criminal offense, he declared at a campaign event in Iowa. As you know, I've had plenty of words about the FBI lately, but I give them great credit for having the courage to right this horrible wrong. Justice will prevail. Now he's pissed. We also do not recall Trump saying then that the letter represented some great breach of Justice Department norms and traditions, or that the FBI director should be removed and replaced with someone who understands the gravity of the mistakes and pledges never to repeat them. Back in July, in fact, Trump's only complaint about Comey's behavior was that he had let Clinton off the hook. In a statement since removed from his campaign website, Trump blamed a rigged system for the FBI's decision not to prosecute. He also tweeted, FBI director said crooked Hillary compromised our national security. No charges. Wow. # rigged system. For months, this was Trump's recurring mantra. In fact, just hours before the release of Comey's letter, Trump appeared on Fox News and claimed that the fact that Clinton was, quote, allowed to run for president, unquote, at all, indicated that, quote, the FBI rolled over and the Department of Justice rolled over. Shortly after Comey's letter was released, Trump praised the decision, saying that Comey had, quote, brought back his reputation, unquote, by resisting pressure against prosecuting Clinton. He even went so far as to declare that what Comey did was the right thing. That's a quote. Attorney General Jeff Sessions apparently agreed, at least when there wasn't a Russia investigation Comey was supervising, that he had the power to stop. On October 30th, following the release of the letter, he argued that Comey had an absolute duty to disclose new evidence in the Clinton email investigation prior to the election. Even last week, the day before Comey testified in front of the Senate Judiciary Committee on his decision to release details of the investigation, Trump was lambasting the director on Twitter for his refusal to recommend criminal charges against Clinton. 2 tweets here. FBI Director Comey was the best thing that ever happened to Hillary Clinton in that he gave her a free pass for many bad deeds. The phony Trump-Russia story was an excuse used by the Democrats as justification for losing the election. Perhaps Trump just ran a great campaign, Donald Trump says about himself. We don't doubt for a moment that many reasonable people object to what Comey did, nor even that there is merit to some of the criticisms, a matter Ben and Jack have discussed at length. But it's a bit late now for Trump and his associates to suddenly discover the virtues of the regular order in Justice Department procedure, having campaigned so aggressively against it. After all, Trump had all of this information available throughout the course of his 4 months of presidency, and indeed since before the election itself. It strains credulity that Trump had simply had an abrupt change of heart on the matter. Removing Comey is also convenient. Of course, getting rid of Comey removes the guy who's running the Russia investigation. It removes the guy who can look Congress in the eye and say credibly that the FBI is investigating whether anyone in the Trump orbit was actively working with the Russians. I guess he can still do that. It removes the guy who in February reportedly refused the White House's request to publicly knock down stories about Trump and Russia, while congressmen in key positions of investigatory responsibility allegedly complied. It removes the one person of stature, figurative as well as literal, in the government whom everyone knows will, even if he's wrong, do what he thinks is the right thing. That's probably true. And damn the torpedoes. It removes, in other words, the essential person for a credible investigation. It's a neat trick. Stymie the Russia investigation by siding with Hillary Clinton. Put another way, what if you had a Saturday Night Massacre and liberals cheered because they hated Archibald Cox? Question before us now is whether Trump will get away with it. There is no question that the president has the legal authority to remove the FBI director, but there's also no question that removing the FBI director in the midst of a high-stakes investigation of Russian influence in the inner circle of the president's campaign and White House is a horrifying breach of every expectation we have of the relationship between the White House and federal law enforcement. What's more, there is also no question that members of Congress, particularly members of the Senate, who are concerned about the integrity of that investigation and more broadly about preventing the gross political intervention in ongoing law enforcement and intelligence operations, that have tools at their disposal. We expect them to use those tools as every American should. The immediate concern is to ensure the integrity of the Russia investigation and all associated investigations and that it's all preserved. Ooh, that was a good point. Somebody pointed out last night, after the special prosecutors in the Watergate investigation was fired, they sealed the office and made sure that all of the evidence was preserved. Now, that's interesting. That's just big question as to, does anybody have access to Comey's office today? And what if you had access to, I don't know, let's say Russian hackers, might you leave behind as you were just searching around to make sure that he got his plants and photos back?
You make an interesting point there because it defies credulity that Jeff Sessions didn't know that Comey was in Los Angeles when they fired him.
Yes. Well, they had to know where he was. Although that was another thing I read yesterday that I guess at this point you can see the outrage from Lawfare Blog. I don't think I need to put any finer point on it, and they probably just say the same thing over again and with a rhetorical flourish at the end. But,
I mean, And there's a lot that has merit there. I will say this. I would add one thing. If Trump wanted to fire Comey, he needed to agree to a special prosecutor. To look right. I mean, he didn't need to. He can do whatever he wants, basically, unless Republicans in the Congress tell him he can't.
Well, yes, and I suppose the wiser political, there was no safe way out of it necessarily politically. Although I guess if you really thought that you weren't going to get any backlash, you might do it this way. But it's a little bit like, it puts Republicans in the same position when they were so uncomfortable with the idea of, I'm not going to vote for a repeal unless there's a replace.
Right.
You know, I'm not gonna okay dismissing the FBI director. I don't want to, we can't have like a 6-month search at this stage, and only to come up with Rudy Giuliani. So, I mean, although I think that was part of their plan, is they'll say, well, you know, the investigation is on hold until we have a new FBI director, and the Democrats are delaying. They're making us, you know, suspend the investigation because they keep saying they're going to filibuster our choice for FBI director or whatever.
I thought they said that the FBI isn't one man. I mean, what? They're all saying this morning that the investigation isn't stalled at all.
I don't know. Who knows what they're saying?
I mean, what do you mean?
Well, tomorrow they'll say something different.
Of course.
So, but I was going to say also, one of the other things that I read in one of the wrap-ups, and I don't even know whether I bothered to put it aside, was that, did you read this one? That the letter firing Comey, speaking of, you know, wanting to give it a physical examination, etc., was delivered, hand-delivered, I guess, to the FBI headquarters in Washington and not L.A. So maybe they didn't know he was in L.A. I don't know. I guess they found out later. But it was delivered by Trump's holdover personal body guy from the Trump organization. His basic personal bodyguard.
His body, whatever.
What is that guy doing with that?
I wonder if it's the same guy who threw Jorge Ramos out of the press conference.
Yeah, I don't know. Maybe. What was that guy? Do we have a name on them? I can't remember this guy's name offhand.
It's Schiller. Yes. His last name.
Right.
And the fact that everybody knew, Schiller did it. I was like, what? People know the name of the private security guard for Trump?
And no one knows. I'm still. This is something we discussed early on, I think, in the transition, that it was just weird, and I don't even know how perfectly lawful. I mean, I guess if you give him a position, fine. And I don't know what they granted to him eventually by way of officialdom, but they just transitioned him from my personal bodyguard to the one guy, the guy who carries the letter firing the FBI. Really, I mean, who? I don't know. I don't know who else do you use as a courier, I guess. I mean, does it make a difference? Do you call?
No, it doesn't make much of a difference. It's just interesting. Again, I'm still struck by the idea that they didn't know Comey was in Los Angeles.
Yes, I don't know. I don't know whether they did or didn't. And then I read also that I guess Comey thought it was a prank of some kind because he
saw it on TV. He saw it on funny TV. Guys.
Yeah, like somebody mocked up a videotape and rolled it on the monitors in there to prank me. But and he stops his talk and goes in a private office and is like nodding with somebody and then shaking hands. You see through the windows. Everybody saw this happen.
As an aside, I mean, there's something funny about Comey getting fired by Trump after contributing to his election victory. It's like, boy, talk about disloyal. Trump just threw the guy over.
Yeah, you kill all the witnesses, I always say. I never say that, but if I were a career criminal, I would say that. Kill all the witnesses. I'm sorry, I probably should not have said that on erase this podcast, everybody. Well, that's mob mentality for you. You just deal with them that way. I don't know what to add to all of that.
I've got a few thoughts on what happened. Let me go back to the pinpoint.
Oh yes,
that I remember.
Good.
And it's the point about Comey telling Trump 3 times that he wasn't under investigation.
Yes. Okay.
That's actually a very serious charge Trump just made against Comey, and frankly himself, if he asked, am I under investigation?
Yes. The only way out of that one is to say, I tried to stop him, but Comey kept saying I wasn't. And I kept saying, don't tell me that. I'm not hearing you. La, 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 la. My fingers are in my ears, but they're too small to block out the sound. So I heard you 3 times. Yeah. That's supposed to be off limits. You don't discuss that.
Yeah. I mean, there's that. And then there's there's a rule. The White House doesn't get to talk to the FBI about ongoing investigations, particularly ones that involve the White House.
Yes.
So, frankly, there needs to be an investigation about that. And the evidence that is the prima facie reason for the investigation is the letter written by the president himself. It's an amazing thing that they left it in there and put it in there. Trump, said, I'm putting that in there. I don't care what it means. If he actually ran it by anybody. There's so much going on that we're just that's sort of falling by the wayside.
Once again,
it's a very serious issue.
Yeah, it's and such an enormous mistake that under normal circumstances one might say there's no way the president wrote and signed that letter. It's got to be. To me, you know what? You want to call everything else fake news? I say it's a fake letter. You're not fired. Go back to work.
It's definitely not his words because he can't write those words. He's not capable. Except that sentence a little bit.
Would put that in
the
there.
Rest of it, no.
So, yeah, I'm curious. I mean, that does seem like the sort of thing that a Trump, Bannon, Miller person puts in there because it never occurs to them because they have no legal training that you are setting yourself up for an enormous impeachable legal problem. Right.
And related to that, I want to just make a point of a story that just broke, which is that I think it was Isikoff. It is Isikoff. The Attorney General and the Deputy Attorney General are interviewing candidates for interim director today. Interviewing candidates for interim director? How about candidates for permanent director? When are you going to start that interview process?
I don't know.
If you have an interim, I'd be more worried about the permanent than the interim.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it may be the same person, and that's how you would sneak somebody in the back door. Oh, my God, you're naming Giuliani. Yeah, I know, but it's just interim. And then,
interim obviously won't be subject to confirmation hearings. So the new plan may be not replacing Comey.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's an entirely possible thing. I mentioned last night in discussions on Twitter that, people were saying, well, the confirmation hearings are going to be a riot. I mean, this place is going to burn down. Well, if they have any, yeah. How would they not? How could they get around it? Well, don't nominate anybody. Just don't.
Yeah. At that point, there won't be any firestorm confirmation hearing where the guy says, are you going to whatever, not speak to the president about this investigation?
And we would say, how dare you leave this vacant? Why? I mean, as soon as I nominate somebody, you're going to attack me for how dare I nominate that person. So I'm not doing it.
Lindsey Graham said it should be someone who gets substantial amount of Democratic votes. I'm like, okay, Loretta Lynch is probably available. You want to name her? I'm sure that will get substantial Democratic votes.
Merrick Garland.
Exactly. Hey, Merrick, we got something for you. Sorry about the Supreme Court seat. How about this one?
Yeah. Well, that would be funny because then that would probably work. I don't know that he'd be a great FBI director.
No, I have no idea if he has any experience at all that would merit it.
Yeah, I don't know. He wouldn't want it. It wouldn't be a good fit, and it's not somebody that I would say, well, I wanted him to be on the Supreme Court. I didn't. I was just like, okay, I'll take him, whatever. And then it just became, now it's a fight. Now I'm interested in it procedurally. Can I make it happen? But as long as I could make it happen, it could have been anybody. So
this will be the next big thing. Apparently, they're going to name the, quote, interim director in the next 24 to 48 hours.
Yeah. So, okay, there's your answer. So we'll name an interim director, and that person will just stay interim forever. And Democrats probably after a certain amount of time will say, look, this is obviously intended to be the permanent replacement. I demand that we have hearings and a vote. And Mitch McConnell will say, the man said it was interim. Can't help you.
Can't help you. Listen, something happened that Feinstein pulled some procedural thing, something called a 2-hour rule in the Judiciary Committee to block the hearing. You know anything about that?
There's standing rules of the Senate that prevent committees from meeting while the Senate is in session. And you normally waive that so that you can have your committee meetings because nobody attends the session anyway. But there are some standing rules that are in practice waived almost all the time. And I don't even know, so they're waived so often that I don't even know the mechanism. It only comes up when somebody is angry and objects to the unanimous consent request for waiver. So they only operate, generally speaking, out of spite or a fit of pique. So I never actually bothered to learn what the rules are. But you can object to routine unanimous consent requests in the morning, and everybody then gets angry because you're preventing committees from meeting and doing their work. But
good.
Yeah.
Well, let's do all those things.
Yes. Easily available. And I would expect to see it for, I don't know,
a few days
a week
at least.
or two. Yeah, right. After a while, they'll get bored about it, or they'll say something's coming up, or I really think,
or no one will notice that the Senate's actually not doing anything.
Right. Or a hearing's coming up that, while it would unfortunately, advance the ball on something terrible, I do have the opportunity to go on television and state how terrible I think it is. So we'll have that hearing. Or I think I'm going to score big points, pinning down an administration official. And there are a few senators who are capable of doing that. But yes. Okay. So Feinstein, well, that's good, because her reaction last night was kind of bland.
Here's an interesting, I assume this is correct, but don't hold to it. This is some guy on Twitter says, by statute, an interim FBI director can be selected from high-level employees of the department and serve up to 300 days.
All right. So that seems likely. You got to deal with the unexpected death or, disability of a FBI director. And
well, it won't take more than 300 days to put the kibosh on the Russia investigation.
Right. You do it tomorrow.
Yep.
So, okay. Well, that would be interesting. By the way, you should send me, one way or another, the link to the Feinstein news, whether that was a tweet.
Okay. Let me hit you up with...
I can include it for everybody else to review.
All I have is ABC reported the 48-hour thing, but let me send you this for now, and I'll look for the ABC one.
Well, we'll hang on to those things. It's just by way of backing up what we're bloggers.
Yeah, we're not just making it up.
I could start.
I'm relying on some guy on Twitter.
Don't look at me. It was a guy on Twitter who said it.
It's Isikoff.
It has the ring of
truth.
Oh, yes.
Not great, but he's not making it up, I don't think.
Presumably not. All right. Let's see. Is there anything else that I thought we should shoehorn in today? Probably not much more.
I mean, if you want to talk about other issues, I'll let go. I will like just 2 minutes to wrap up what I think what this means.
Okay.
It means this to me, and it's a challenge that I think at least as of 11:48 or 10:48, the media is meeting. They're taking this seriously. They're being very aggressive, and they don't buy the lies. They're not both sizing it. The few that tried have been slapped out pretty hard, and they've sort of slinked away. I would include Saliza on that. I don't know. Fournier blocks me, which is great because I don't really want to see him.
All right.
But Matthew Dowd is taking it seriously. The usual suspect, both siders are sort of not. Everyone's outrage meter is pretty high. I stretched Gregory last night, I think, is the epitome of that. He went ape shit last night. Ooh, ape S-H.
Yes. Dumb.
Asterisk T.
Yes, we'll have to watch that more often. Okay.
Sorry. And especially now that we're at risk because now the FCC is going after
that's
people.
right. And, more on that later.
Is taking it seriously. Republicans are playing their game, though enough are expressing concerns that they can flip over. I was a little surprised by Graham and Collins not being more concerned. McCain is concerned, but Graham and Collins are, this is no big deal, which surprised me just a bit, Susan Collins. But there's at least 7 or 8 Republican senators who have definitely put themselves on the side of that really being able to step over into independent counsel territory pretty easily.
Phil Collins, by the way, irate, but Susan Collins.
Phil Collins, he's writing a new song about it. Right. That's how irate he is. And I think that my fear would be if this doesn't hold, What then do we say about the checks and balances, if any, on Donald Trump? I think they disappear. I'm not sure that if this moment doesn't crystallize into something that stops Trump in his tracks, what's going to be the thing that does? Because this has all the earmarks of the, as Greg and I discussed in the beginning of the show or earlier in the show, of where the Beltway and the media and moderate Republicans, everybody is, this isn't right. You know, lawfare got pretty unhinged for lawfare in what you just wrote. No one's saying, well, he has the power. You know, there's no both sidesing this right now.
Mm-hmm.
So what if he gets away with it? I think that portends real problems. And it's not something that should be taken lightly. This is actually, and Schumer this morning really elevated it again. It got a lot of coverage. It's dominating the story. It's the dominant story of the day. Let me tell you how dominant it was. Remember the big to-do about Heath Mello in Nebraska, Omaha, Nebraska mayoral race?
Yes, although...
Yeah, no, I mean, it was this and something bad happened. This would be a great day for recrimination because he lost. He lost by a lot.
Okay.
There would be finger pointing. It's your fault. No, it's your fault. And there's just no time for that today.
Huh. Yes, I guess not. He lost.
There isn't. I mean, literally, I found out, I don't know, 10 o'clock.
I just found out
somebody
now.
said, oh, look what happened in Omaha. It's like, what? The guy lost? How about, what, did he lose bad? Yeah, he lost really bad. It's like, yeah, well, okay. And that was it.
Right, all right.
That's how big this story is because, you know, we love to have fights amongst each other, and I'm as guilty as anybody. I'm always fighting with our own side and probably should do less of it. But I was even bored with fighting with my own side because of this story. So
yes, okay.
This is that kind of story, and if it doesn't translate into a real check on Trump, then what will?
I guess that's a very good point. By the way, another entry in the, if the, other stories that didn't make it to see the light of day. I mean, they obviously did because they're covered. I can tell you about them because they have been. The U.S. Census Director
right. That's a huge story. And we actually should get back to that.
Yeah, and I'll share a bit of that story, but you're absolutely right. This is blotting out everything else. And it had a very good point you and Greg both made that this has the advantage of being the kind of thing that the press is very used to and very eager to handle, or at least latch onto. Whether it handles it correctly or not, we have yet to see.
No, it's absolutely this is actually a normal thing that the press gets up in arms about. They're not used to presidents just out and out lying to them like illegal votes and crowd sizes at inauguration and all the other things Trump does. They don't know what to do with that.
I suspect they have a better frame. Yeah, this is a framework that they have got, and I think it makes it more possible to understand or build a framework for the rest of it. I think once they latched on in the Watergate days to the fact that Nixon was lying about things this important, they began to realize that he might lie about anything. And it was that was the cementing of a mainstream reputation that the president was a liar, which was a hell of a thing at the time. Now, of course, everybody believes it in one way or another about one president or another. But even in the face of blatant lying about the dumbest things ever, it just, I don't know, it just didn't catch the popular
imagination. It didn't seem like the things he was lying about matter because, let's be honest, who cares what his inauguration crowd size was, other than him? Yeah. We were making fun of it because we like to laugh at him, but
yeah. And there were members of the president. Well, if he'll lie about this, there might be, what else might he lie about? But everybody would nod and say, yeah, that's a good point, well put, and that was it. So we'll see. I mean, it's the pivot we've been waiting for. Except it was the media that had to pivot, not Donald Trump. Maybe that's it.
Well, I mean, the pivot, it is a pivot in the sense that this is more conventional Washington, D.C. scandal.
Yeah.
This is, as you said, this is in their wheelhouse. So it's a pivot to more conventional government cover up. Oh, look at the scandal. He fired the guys investigating him stuff. They don't have to think too hard on this one and wonder how to approach it and not have segments about tweets. the tweeting is part of the story too, but it's actually a fairly minor part of the story at this point.
Yes. Well, this will be very interesting to see how they deal with it. Here on a personnel level here, Ryan Grimm leaving HuffPost for The Intercept.
Yeah,
how
hopefully
will
he
Ryan
will.
Grimm
That
deal
will
with
be
this?
a good change for The Intercept because Grimm is a very good reporter, and if he treats the job the way he's treated his other jobs, I would expect that to be a great improvement in their coverage.
A pivot point for The Intercept. Maybe. All right.
No, I think it's a great hire for The Intercept as long as he's Ryan Grimm and they let him be Ryan Grimm. If they turn him into, just
Someone else.
a front, well, then
Right.
not so good. Anyway, let you take 5 minutes to talk about that census story because it probably does need more attention.
All right. Well, I haven't actually got that much, but that's okay. I
Well,
wanted to
5
get it on the
minutes is
record.
all you got.
Yeah. So I might as well make some use of it. Thanks,
All right.
Armando. We'll talk to you again.
I'm sure we'll be talking about this day after day, but
Nah, this is the
thanks
end
for
of it.
letting me air it out from my own perspective.
All right. Well, I'm glad we got the chance because this story has no legs. It's going
Okay.
nowhere.
I think it's got plenty of legs. We'll
Okay.
see. Okay.
We'll
Talk
see.
to you later.
All right. Thanks, Armando. Yeah, it's actually time to begin wrapping up, but I will put this on the record. I did let you know everybody's reporting this one. The Washington Post U.S. Census Director resigns amid turmoil over 2020 count. That would be 2020 census, our next scheduled census. And of course, this is a huge issue because of how much of government operations and indeed our electoral operations. I mean, that's the most immediate thing, comes most immediately to mind is redistricting and reapportionment of Congress, which has been jury-rigged the whole time, and been an enormous problem and a growing one, and one which is getting more and more attention these days. I've noticed, like Frederick Douglass. Now an even bigger red flag going up with the resignation of the head of the Census Bureau over underfunding of the Bureau and undercutting its ability to do a fair and decent and accurate job in figuring out who the hell lives where and how many members of Congress you ought to have. So it's an enormous problem. We'll dig into that a little bit more, I'm sure, perhaps in the balance of the week. Lots to go over tomorrow, and we may as well pull out all the stops and bring out all the really wacky, cuckoo stories we're following out there, because a lot of them have roots in the Russia story, and that's going to just bring this whole thing front and center again. What a day. Thank you to Greg. Thank you to Armando. We missed you, Joan, but thank you, I'm sure, for helping handle things on the front page over at Daily Kos. We are not without your guiding hand in all of this. We missed you, though, and we'll look forward to hearing from you next Wednesday. What's up next? The after show. Now batting cleanup, and I imagine there's an awful lot of cleanup to do. Let's see what they've got on tap for you here. Thanks, Justice. Strippers. Wow. Sue a Colorado nightclub in a labor dispute. Go Strippers. Oregon has not released any of the tax monies collected on cannabis sales. They forgot. They were high. You see, I don't know. What's the reason for that one? And Trump calling his leadership fantastic. Egyptian President Abdul Fattah al-Sisi provides a blueprint on consolidating power and destroying the court system. What a great idea. I think I ought to do that here in the United States of America. Thank you. Abdul Fattah, what's your name? Okay, for the last half, of course, a visit with Angela Marks, Angie in Washington State, for a big political news roundup.
From Daily Kos Radio on networksradio.com. You have been listening to the Kagro in the Morning Show
with David Waldman.
Thank you very much for listening. I wonder what Angela will have to talk about in the last half. There's not a lot of news happening today. Of course, many more stories that we weren't able to bring to you today we'll bring to you tomorrow, and the big wrap-up show on Friday. Stay tuned. We'll hang on tight and see what the next couple days bring us.